There comes a point in life when a human being must finally face the root of their own power, not as theory, not as pretty philosophy, but as something living, practical, and inevitable. That point is now. You think your results are the fruit of luck, circumstances, physical effort, or what others did or failed to do. But I tell you with authority, none of that governs your life. What governs your life is the silent conversation you have with yourself every day. This inner dialogue is the true cause. The world outside is merely the echo. And as long as you keep speaking like someone who waits, searches, asks, wishes, dreams, but does not claim, nothing changes. Life is literal. Life obeys your inner position, not your intentions. That's why I want you to understand deeply and seriously what it means to change how you speak for just 3 days. These 3 days are not about magic phrases, not about quick techniques, and not about convincing the universe to give you what you want. They are about unshakably assuming the state you wish to live in and sustaining that state with your language. When you speak, you are choosing a world. Every sentence is a brick that builds or destroys the state you occupy. Most people speak by describing what they see, and thus remain prisoners of what they see. They describe the empty bank account, the lack of opportunities, the difficulty, the waiting, the fear. And the world merely amplifies what they themselves declare. But one who knows the law speaks from the end. They do not report, they determine. They do not react to what exists, they establish what will be. The introduction I am making now is to break your old identity as a helpless observer. I want you to see with clarity that physical reality is only a delayed reflection of the inner state you nourish. What you speak for 3 days creates a field, an atmosphere, an inner climate that reorganizes circumstances, people, and paths. This is not superstition, but structure. Your word is the mold the invisible uses to form the visible. When you change how you speak, you change your position. And when you change your position, everything around you must rearrange itself. Therefore, when I say, speak this way for 3 days, I am instructing you to do what you have always had the power to do but rarely do. Speak as a creator, not as a victim. Speak as one who determines, not as one who begs. Speak as one who knows, not as one who doubts. These 3 days are an internal ritual of authority, a silent declaration. I assume my state. I move as one who already is. And when someone sustains that state with their word, the physical world not only responds, it bows. Because reality was never greater than you. It was always a mirror. And now the time has come for you to decide what you want to see reflected. The first principle begins in the place where almost no one dares to enter. The end. Not the end as a termination, but the end as a realization. Most people speak from the journey, the difficulties, the expectations, the doubts, and the whys. But the Creator, one who knows the law, speaks from the end. They mentally place themselves at the point where everything is already completed, where the life they desire is already real, and from there, they look back. This is the secret that separates those who transform reality from those who merely react to it. When you speak from the end, you do not describe the current condition, but affirm the desired condition as something already existing. You do not say, I want to prosper. You say, I live in prosperity now. You do not say, one day I will be healed. You affirm, I am health in its fullness. This change, though it may seem small, is a total break from the old state. Speaking from the end requires courage because it means completely ignoring what the senses insist on showing. Your eyes may see lack, but your word declares abundance. Your feelings may be restless, but your consciousness assumes the peace of one who has already won. And it is precisely in this apparent conflict between the visible and the assumed that the law operates. The physical world is slow, it always reflects the previous state. Therefore, if you speak from what you see, you remain stuck in the past. But when you speak from the end, you update your state, and it is the updated state that the world will have to obey. It doesn't matter if nothing changes immediately. The change has already happened, because real change always begins within. Speaking from the end also demands discipline. The old mind will try to drag you back to old dialogues. I don't know if it will work. Things are difficult. I've never been lucky. This is too much for me. These phrases are anchors that tie you to the state you want to abandon. When they arise, do not fight them. Simply return to the end. Affirm again, calmly and with certainty, what you would be if you already had what you desire. Treat this affirmation as an inner dwelling place, not as a mantra you mechanically repeat. The more you remain in this state, the more natural it becomes. And when the new state becomes natural, the old one loses strength and disappears. There is a moment, silent and almost imperceptible, when you realize you are no longer trying to believe. You already believe. You are no longer rehearsing the end. You already occupy it. It is then that the word you sustain for 3 days begins to reorganize your reality. People change positions, paths open, ideas emerge, opportunities appear. None of this is coincidence. Everything is a response. Life does not ask random questions, it responds to the state you assume. And when you speak as one who already lives the end, your entire life must align with that decree. It is law. It is simple. It is immutable. It is power. The second principle requires you to speak as someone who has already been chosen, because this is the truth that sustains all creation. You do not receive because you deserve it, nor because you fought for it, nor because you asked enough. You receive because you have assumed that it is already yours. This is the difference between the heir and the beggar. The beggar waits for signs to believe. The heir believes before any sign. The beggar says, "I hope it happens." The heir affirms, "This already belongs to me." That is why so many fail, because they continue to use the language of one who doubts, who waits for permission, who places themselves beneath their own life. Their words reflect insecurity, and reality returns precisely that position. But when you begin to speak as one born to receive, there is no more tension, no more struggle, no more anxiety. There is only certainty. This certainty is not arrogance. It is alignment with the law. Scripture itself says that you should call into being things that are not as though they were. It does not say to call them as a possibility, nor as a desire. It says to call them as reality. This means that when you speak, you are not begging for divine intervention. You are assuming an inner position that has already been decreed. You clothe yourself in this identity. You act as one chosen to live that. It doesn't matter if the external world still says otherwise. The law does not respond to the world. It responds to consciousness. What you accept internally becomes the authority of your life. The problem is that many ask for prosperity while describing themselves as unlucky. They ask for love while defining themselves as unworthy. They ask for health while repeating stories of pain. Every word that repeats these old states reinforces the wrong identity. And reality obediently replicates that identity in every detail. But when you speak as chosen, you break this cycle. You say, "I'm already favored. I'm already prosperous. I'm already loved. I'm already guided and supplied." Not as empty affirmations, but as the natural posture of one who finally remembered who they are. Adopting this posture does not mean denying what exists, but rather denying that what exists has authority over you. You can be in the midst of difficulty and still speak as one who has already overcome. This is not ignorance, it is sovereignty. The difficulty is temporary. The identity is eternal. And when the correct identity is assumed, it pulls all reality to the same level. That is why you need to guard every sentence. Every time you say something, ask yourself, does this represent someone who has been chosen? If it does not, do not say it. 3 days of speaking as an heir, not as a victim, change any destiny. Because the entire universe bows before one who finally takes their rightful place. The third principle reveals something many ignore, but which defines absolutely everything. You cannot contradict yourself. Most people try to use the law for a few minutes and then spend the rest of the day undoing everything they created. It's like lighting a flame in the morning and extinguishing it dozens of times throughout the day. They affirm, "I receive with ease," but minutes later comment, "Nothing works out for me." They say, "My life is changing," but hours later complain about the weight of circumstances. This oscillation is not only useless, it is destructive. Because the mind, upon receiving opposing messages, always clings to those that carry stronger emotion. And generally, the stronger emotion is in fear, not in faith. That is why so many people live a cycle of advances that never materialize. When you contradict yourself, you plant and uproot the seed at the same time. You affirm prosperity, but reinforce scarcity. You declare peace, but feed anxiety. You try to build, but by speaking, you undo. Reality does not respond to what you say occasionally. It responds to what you sustain repeatedly. The word you maintain, not the word you experiment with. And that is why this principle requires constant vigilance. Not tense vigilance, but conscious vigilance. You need to observe the type of phrases that come out of your mouth when you are distracted, tired, or emotionally shaken. It is in these moments that the old state tries to regain control. It is then that old patterns try to resurface. And it is at that exact instant that you must take a stand. Contradiction arises because you still believe, even subtly, that the external world has more power than your internal state. When you see a bill, a difficulty, a rejection, or a delay, you immediately return to speaking like one who is at its mercy. It's almost automatic. And it is precisely this automatism that must be broken. During the 3 days of practice, you need to train your mind not to react to what you see, but to reaffirm what you have chosen to be. This creates consistency, and consistency creates reality. When a contradictory thought arises, you don't need to argue with it or fight it, or try to forcefully expel it. Simply do not feed it with words. Simply do not turn it into a decree. The power of a thought is not in the thought itself, but in the word that gives it life. Silence your contradiction. Speak only what represents your destiny, not what represents your old story. 3 days without cancelling your own decrees are enough to completely change the atmosphere around you. Because when your word becomes coherent, your reality stops resisting. Everything that once seemed stuck begins to flow, and it is not a miracle. It is a direct consequence of what you finally sustained without turning back. The fourth principle requires you to speak with feeling, not with desperation, not with effort, not as someone repeating something to convince the universe, but as someone resting in a truth already attained. There is a profound difference between repeating words and inhabiting them. One who repeats merely tries, one who inhabits already is. The person who tries is always looking for an external sign to believe. The person who inhabits speaks with the tranquility of one who knows the end is already established. The law does not respond to the volume of your voice, nor the intensity of your request. It responds to the internal tone that accompanies your words. And that tone must be of one who already possesses, not of one who begs to receive. When you speak from desperation, your emotion betrays that you are still in a state of lack. Your words ask, but your feeling contradicts. And remember, feeling is the root of creation. The word is the mold, but feeling is the material that fills that mold. It is impossible to create abundance from a vibration of fear. It is impossible to create victory from a defeated spirit. It is impossible to attract love while you perceive yourself as needy. Therefore, this principle invites you to adjust not only what you say, but the emotional atmosphere that surrounds what you say. You don't need to feel euphoria, simply feel rest. Rest is the signature of one who knows it has already happened. This rest begins in the imagination. Imagine yourself living what you affirm. Do not force the image. Allow it to emerge. See yourself in the completed end. Feel the naturalness of it being a part of your life. It doesn't need to be a vivid or long visualization. It simply needs to be an internal acceptance. When you speak after feeling, your word has weight. It is not an attempt. It is a decree. The invisible world responds to this type of vibration immediately because it carries conviction, not doubt. Speaking with feeling also means completely abandoning haste. Haste is always a child of fear. One who rushes reveals that they still believe it might not happen. When you assume the desired state, you lose the urgency. You stop asking when and begin to affirm, it is already. This shift transforms everything because it takes you out of a state of tension and places you into a state of creation. 3 days of speaking with this feeling, the feeling of possession, of rest, of completion, creates such a coherent vibration that reality begins to reorganize around you. People appear, doors open, ideas emerge, not because you anxiously sought them, but because you rested in certainty. This is the power of speaking with feeling. You do not push reality, you attract it. You do not force the end, you become the end. And when that happens, everything around you inevitably bows. The fifth principle is the most challenging for the human mind because it requires you to speak while completely ignoring current evidence. Most people live enslaved by what they see, as if the physical world were the supreme authority. But what you see today is just a delayed photograph of the state you carried yesterday. Matter is slow. It is a response, never a cause. As long as you continue to use circumstances as a thermometer of your faith, you will be trapped in an endless cycle of repetition, always attracting more of what already exists, because you can only speak from what your eyes confirm. This principle comes to break that prison. Ignoring the evidence is not denying reality. It is denying that visible reality has power over your creation. When you see an unexpected bill, an obstacle, a delay, or a silence where you expected movement, your old mind tries to push you back to the language of fear. It's not working, nothing changes, I knew it would be difficult. If you give in to these phrases, you return to the old state. But if, faced with the same circumstance, you calmly and firmly affirm, "It is done, I already have it, the path is open," you create a breakthrough. This breakthrough is the moment the law manifests, because you prove, not to the universe but to yourself, that you believe more in the assumed state than in the temporary scenario. Imagination is always the cause, reality is always the effect. And that is why during the 3 days of practice, you need to treat the external world as something neutral, as a delayed echo that holds no authority. Your word, during these days, must be sovereign. Ignoring the evidence means not despairing when nothing happens, and not getting excessively excited when something positive appears. Both are distractions. You don't speak because you are seeing signs, you speak because you are assuming the end. When the external world stops controlling your words, the law understands that you are finally in command. And that is when everything changes. The invisible reorganizes first. The visible comes later. People begin to move, opportunities emerge, encounters happen, ideas arise, paths align, but all of this is a consequence. The cause is you. 3 days of completely ignoring what your senses report break the power of your old self-image. You create a new inner field, a new vibrational identity, and reality must adjust to that identity. It is not possible for someone to sustain a firm, coherent word for 3 days, detached from appearances, without provoking a change in the external world. That is why I tell you, when you stop looking for signs, the signs appear. When you stop looking outward for confirmation, confirmation arrives. Ignore what is, speak as what will be, and everything around you will bend to your certainty. Because reality has no choice when it encounters someone who has finally decided to take command. We have reached the point where everything that has been said must cease to be merely understood and begin to be lived. The law does not manifest because you studied it, nor because you admired it, nor because you found it beautiful or profound. It manifests when you embrace it as the only truth capable of governing your life. It doesn't matter the past, it doesn't matter your mistakes, it doesn't matter what you believed until yesterday. What matters is the state you choose now. If you sustain a coherent, firm word, aligned with the desired end for 3 days, your entire reality will begin to move. Not because you asked, but because you commanded. Because the word is an order, not a plea. You are not here to beg life to accept you. You are here to command the life you wish to live. Every sentence you utter is a decree. Every affirmation is a path opened or closed. Every emotion is a vibrational signature that molds the invisible. And now you know this. Now you are aware that nothing external has more authority than the state you assume internally. From this moment on, stop describing what exists. Stop repeating what the world shows. Stop surrendering to the external the power that has always been yours. Speak from the end. Speak as chosen. Speak without contradiction. Speak with feeling. Speak ignoring appearances. Speak as a creator, not as someone waiting for permission to live their own life. With every sentence, remember, you are the creative center of your experience. Reality is not against you. It is merely obeying the last order it received. And you are about to give a new order, clear, firm, non-negotiable. For 3 days, sustain this word as one who carries an eternal truth. Let the world bow to your certainty. Let circumstances reorganize around you. Let the invisible work in your favor. You don't need to chase anything. Just assume, just declare, just be. Life responds to those who dare to decree with conviction. May this be the moment you forever abandon the identity of the beggar and assume the posture of the heir. May this be the moment you stop waiting for signs and start creating them. May this be the moment your word becomes law, because that is what it has always been. Now go, speak this way for 3 days, and see, not with surprise but with recognition, reality bend to the state you have chosen. Because everything already is, and it is within you.